My name is Clara Dawson. For nearly 6 years, I worked as the executive assistant to Adrian Cole, the magnate the press calls the Wolf of Mergers, and whose name employees are afraid to utter out loud. I managed his schedule, put out reputational fires before they became headlines, and in return, I earned a salary that could pay for 3 apartments, plus the bitter privilege of seeing behind the elite's curtain. When you enter the mirrored skyscraper of coal industries for the first time, you feel like the place is watching you. The atrium is 60 feet high with a citrus scent they spray every hour. The turnstiles read your retina, palm, and heartbeat. But the detail that always unsettled me was the elevator. The panel jumped from 28 to 30, from 42 to 44, as if some floors simply didn't exist. I asked the head of maintenance. He laughed nervously and said it was an architect's superstition. A lie. I felt it in my bones that something big was hidden there. I just never imagined what. On the night of October 5th, I found out. It was 10:47 p.m. when my extension rang. The hoarse voice of the B-shift receptionist sounded shaky. "Clara, Mr. Cole has ordered the private elevator to be released. Only you are to come up. Private elevator. A different biometric code. No employee ever went up there. Not even vice presidents." I swiped the special keycard on the reader. The doors closed with a pneumatic sigh, and the panel displayed a single letter, T. The car began to descend slowly, against the normal direction. My stomach dropped with it. When the doors opened, the shock was absolute. There was no high-tech vault, no nickel-plated servers. There was a hallway with beige tiles, a waxed floor that creaked, a familiar smell of wet chalk, a school hallway from the 1990s. At the end, a set of wooden double doors with a rectangular window. Above it, an enameled sign, 3rd grade, Mrs. Marion. I pushed the door. A long creak. I stepped inside. Tiny green desks in rows, each with a name written on a label maker sticker. Adrian C. appeared on the first desk, right in the center of the front row. On the chalkboard, the multiplication tables up to 6x9 were written in fresh chalk. The analog clock on the wall read 2:15 p.m. And, I realized later, it was stopped, but a recorded ticking sound came from hidden speakers to fool the ears. To the right, fake windows displayed a sky made of LED panels. It was a perfect replica of a children's classroom, frozen in time. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Adrian's voice came from behind me. I spun around, my heart racing. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit without a tie, his hair impeccably slicked back. But his eyes, they weren't the cold, always-on eyes I knew. They were the eyes of a tired boy. He walked between the desks, sliding his fingertips over the tops as if caressing memories. He sat down at the desk with his name on it. His knees barely fit under the wood. "Do you know what it's like to feel that the world expects a monster?" he asked, not looking at me. "Investors, journalists, my own lawyers, they all want scandals to confirm their theories. But my worst memory happened when I was 8. I ran away from the talent show to hide at home. Here, no one laughed at me." He pointed to the chalkboard. I was speechless. I hired set designers, memory psychologists, a playwright, everything reconstituted in detail. Even the smell, it's real chalk, mixed with a school essence spray. Every Friday actors come here, classmates, the teacher, the principal. We repeat that afternoon from 1994. I stand in the back, and things happen the right way. The fluorescent lights hummed like insects, and the fake ticking seemed to frame his every word. Adrian took a cassette tape recorder from his jacket, a portable relic from another century, and pressed play. A hiss, a click, then a child's timid, breathy voice. "I'm Adrian, and when I grow up, no one is ever going to call me a coward again." The sound stopped. Adrian closed his eyes, as if that sentence were both a blessing and a punishment. "I need your silence," he finally said. "I pay good bonuses for loyalty, Clara, but now I'm asking as a human. Do you understand that?" I understood. I understood shame, pain, loneliness, all camouflaged by billions of dollars and headlines about business aggression. I nodded. I couldn't find my voice. When I returned to the elevator, I felt nauseous. My head was pounding. There comes a point where protecting becomes enabling. I slept for 2 hours that night. Deep in the night, I decided that if I stayed, I needed to uncover everything before the world discovered half of it, and crucified him without knowing who he really was. A man chasing his lost childhood with infinite money. 3 days after that night, I already had a new mental protocol. Everything involving Adrian Cole required 2 layers of interpretation, the public and the subterranean. He continued to be the ruthless billionaire at the top of the financial headlines. But now, to me, he was also the 8-year-old boy trapped in the hallway of a ghost school. On Monday at 8 a.m. sharp, I arrived on the 87th floor as usual, with the face of someone who knew nothing. But inside, my mind was spinning. How many people knew about that secret floor? How many helped build that childhood theater? And more importantly, why did he trust me? Adrian, as usual, arrived at 10:12 a.m., coffee in hand, and his phone already glued to his ear. But that day, something was different. As he passed my desk, he didn't say good morning. He whispered, "Tonight, 11 p.m., in the 3rd grade." I nodded discreetly. This was how it was now. I was part of the performance. That evening, after the last executives had left and the glass panels began to mirror only the city's darkness, I went to the private elevator. The panel flashed T, the same slow descent. This time, there were voices in the room. "Good job, Adrian," a man dressed as a teacher said. "Your science presentation was excellent." Other childish voices applauded him. They were actors, of course, all adults, but in children's clothes and mannerisms, a carefully staged delusion. I hid behind a half-open door and watched. Adrian was at the front of the room, holding a crude model of a volcano made of styrofoam and poster paint. "When the baking soda meets the vinegar," he said enthusiastically, and the eruption began. The teacher cheered, the classmates clapped. The audience was himself. For a moment, I saw something in his eyes that I had never seen in meetings with CEOs, in billion-dollar negotiations, or even in TV interviews. True joy. There, Adrian was no longer a billionaire. He was just a boy being applauded for something he made with his own hands. A boy who perhaps was never truly applauded. Later, while the actors were changing in the makeshift backstage area, Adrian called me over. "Clara, have you ever wanted to go back to a certain moment?" "I have, but I never thought of building that moment with drywall and neon," I replied, a bit ironically. He smiled, tired. "Pain is much more expensive to erase than we imagine. People spend money on therapists, on cars, on yachts. But the past is priceless. It can only be rebuilt." It was on that day that I decided to find out how much of that building was a performance. I started digging. I was the executive assistant. I had access to emails, payment orders, vendor lists. I discovered there were 3 front companies that performed periodic renovations in the building's sublevels. One was responsible for recreating different sets: a classroom, a schoolyard, a red brick house, a children's medical clinic. The other 2 hired actors, psychologists, and screenwriters, specializing in effective memory. This was more than a themed floor. It was an entire complex of alternate reality. I trembled. This was an industry of memories. One Thursday, I decided to go further. I made up an excuse that Adrian had sent me down ahead of him and went alone. I entered the classroom. It was empty. On the chalkboard, someone had written, "Tonight will be different." On the teacher's desk, there was a cassette tape with my name handwritten on it, Clara. I put it in the room's tape recorder. I pressed play. The voice was Adrian's, but different, more fragile, more vulnerable. "Clara, if you're hearing this, it's because the trust I've placed in you has crossed the boundaries of my own sanity. I've never let anyone fully into this, but maybe someone needs to understand. Someone with a heart that's still whole. Because mine was broken a long time ago." Silence. Then a click. The tape ended. I left the room with my hands sweating. I no longer knew if he wanted to be helped or saved, or watched. The audio from that tape played in my head all weekend. I heard it while I washed the dishes, while I tried to sleep, even while I made coffee. Because mine was broken a long time ago. The sentence had the weight of an epitaph. And I, who was supposed to be just an assistant, realized I was becoming the unwilling confidant of a secret far too big. On Monday morning, I decided to map out every piece of this effective labyrinth Adrian had built. The building had 4 ghost levels, but the maintenance team claimed the private elevators only reached 2, T3 and T4. I needed convincing excuses to move around, contracts to be signed, security checks, compliance inspections. No one suspected. My golden keycard still opened doors. In the accounting archives, I found an expense line that never appeared on the public balance sheets. Immersive Experience Services, item 7794, 3 monthly payments, absurd amounts, deposited into Nevada accounts. I requested a copy of the contract through our internal legal department under the pretext of an internal SEC audit. The PDF arrived at 10:17 p.m., when the building was already dark. I opened it alone, taking a deep breath. Clause 2.4. Key characters. The client will be entitled to actors representing Mrs. Marion, substitute maternal figure. Classmates, Alan, Bruce, Denise, primary bullying links. Principal Evans, hostile authority. There were stage directions. Alan must laugh with a nervous twitch. Bruce spits when he talks. Denise repeats, "Coward, coward." It was a choreography of humiliation, reproduced exactly so that Adrian could edit it to his liking. I slammed the laptop shut. I felt a tightness in my chest. This man, idolized by business magazines, was spending millions to relive the worst afternoon of his life, over and over, in the hopes of rewriting it. The next morning, I arrived before sunrise and waited for the actors. They always came on Thursdays, but there was an extra call on that Tuesday. They were surprised to see me in the subterranean antechamber, but my keycard was enough. One of them, who played the classmate Bruce, was bald, in his 40s, with a soft voice off stage. His name was Martin. I took advantage of the lukewarm coffee they served there and struck up a conversation. "Do you repeat the same play every week?" I asked casually. Martin shrugged. "Depends on the script. Sometimes the boy Adrian just wants to win the science fair. Other times he needs to confront the mean principal. It's like exposure therapy, but with an infinite budget." The coldness with which he said, "the boy Adrian," sent a shiver down my spine. That's how they saw my boss, a giant child in an executive's body. "Does he talk to you afterward?" I ventured. "Almost never. He watches from a distance. When the scene is over, the lights go out and we leave in silence. And we get paid in cash. No questions asked. Cash." Adrian's world revolved in absolute secrecy. He wouldn't even risk a bank transfer with these performers. Shortly after, a short horn blast echoed from the speakers. It was the signal for them to take their positions. The actors marched down the hall. I stayed hidden behind a partition, watching. The fluorescent lights came on. Desks, a chalkboard, the smell of chalk again. Today, however, there was a drastic difference. Next to the door, a modern LED panel replaced one of the fake windows. It displayed a countdown. Recording 1:04:59. When it hit 0, I heard the click of a camera engaging. They were filming everything. For what purpose? Adrian appeared behind me, silent as always. He was wearing a navy blue sweatshirt and khaki pants, none of his usual armored suits. "Clara, I need you to watch, but don't interfere," he whispered. The scene began. Alan stole little Adrian's pencil case. Bruce laughed loudly. Denise pointed, "Coward, coward." The teacher let it slide. The principal, when called, humiliated Adrian in front of the class. It was painful even for me to watch. The difference. Today, the new Adrian, an adult, sitting in the back, raised his hand. "Principal Evans, with all due respect, this is unfair." His adult voice sounded out of place in the children's room. "If anyone here is laughing at me, it's because they don't know how important I can become." The actor playing the principal improvised, "Sit down, you insolent boy." But Adrian didn't sit. He took a step forward and snatched the pencil case from Bruce's hand. He looked at Denise, who froze mid-word. Then, he simply walked out the door. In the fiction, he won. In the past, perhaps not. The lights went out. The recording stopped. The actors remained motionless until a discreet green light on the ceiling indicated scene over. They left the room in ritualistic silence. Adrian and I were left, breathing in the chalk dust. He turned around. His pupils were dilated, sweat on his forehead. "Did it work?" he asked, but not to me, to his own memory. I shrugged, helpless. "Only you can answer that." He walked past me, leaving without another word. Behind him, the LED panel flashed a new countdown. Recording 2:0:30. There would be another scene, another round, until his memory surrendered. I stood there, trembling. I had accessed the rawest intimacy of a man who controlled global markets. On the surface, he was absolute power. At his core, a wounded child. The question hammered in my head. How long until he loses himself completely in this simulation? I went up to the executive floor. My email inbox was flooded with press inquiries about a billion-dollar merger Adrian was set to announce on Thursday. The real world was spinning upstairs, hungry for figures. Down here, he was playing at rewriting his childhood. At my desk, I turned on my phone's voice recorder, pressed record, and whispered, "Clara's diary, day 3. The theater has expanded. Filming has begun. Actors paid in cash. Adrian is opening fissures in the past that may never close." I didn't know if I was recording for a future book, for my own sanity, or as insurance against something worse. I just knew I was in too deep to back out, and too far gone to pretend nothing was happening. The rest of that week became a game of appearances. While journalists lined up at reception for the Thursday press conference, the merger of coal industries with the second-largest sovereign wealth fund in Asia, I responded with professional smiles, handing out press kits that spoke of global synergy and sustainable growth. But inside, all I could think about was the sublevel, the repeated scenes, the panel flashing countdowns like a sick metronome. On Wednesday, I received a brown envelope, hand-delivered by a courier with no ID badge. Inside was just a black flash drive and a post-it note. "Watch alone, 11 p.m., your station." No signature, no stamp. I glanced down the hall. There was no sign of the messenger. He had vanished the next instant. I waited for the office to empty. At 10:55 p.m., I sat in my cubicle and connected the flash drive. A single file. Scene family dinner to MP4. I pressed play. The image was of a 1980s dining room, floral wallpaper, an amber lamp. At the head of the table, a child Adrian. I recognized the haircut. To his left, a man with a stern expression in a brown suit. To his right, a pale woman who avoided looking at the boy. Father and mother, I assumed. The boy offered a drawing. The father tore the paper without a word. The mother just looked away. Hard cut. Black screen. Then, Adrian's adult voice, off camera. "Retake, version 12. Now they approve of the drawing." My blood ran cold. It wasn't just the classroom. There were other traumatic stages. And someone, besides me, was monitoring or leaking this material. I closed the video, removed the flash drive, and shoved it in my bag. On my computer screen, a pop-up appeared. Secure message, Martin R., the bald actor who played Bruce. "We need to talk. 12:15 a.m., loading dock, level B4. B4? I didn't even know a B2 existed. I took the service stairs. Motion sensors lit up fluorescent bulbs in a ghostly cadence. Arriving at B4, I found Martin leaning against a metal door with a red, restricted, HVAC seal. The actor wasn't in costume. He wore a gray sweatshirt, his eyes exhausted. "It's getting worse," he said, without preamble. "Today we filmed the dinner scene." He stopped halfway through and shattered the china with his bare hands, wanting to feel the real pain. "Why did you send me the video?" I asked, clutching the flash drive in my pocket. "Because no one upstairs cares. But you seem to care." I opened my mouth to reply, but he held up his hands. "Just promise me that, if you can, you'll get him out of this. We get paid well, but this isn't therapy. It's an addiction. Adrian is addicted to correcting something that can't be changed." Behind him, the HVAC door creaked, and I realized it wasn't just any ventilation shaft. Inside were fiber optic cables, stacked servers, flashing blue lights. HVC was a front for a private data center. Martin held out a temporary keycard. 5 minutes before the alarm, I went in. The cold air bit my cheeks. The hum of the coolers sounded like distant turbines. On the opposite wall, monitors displayed multiple windows, facial synthesis software, editing timelines, deepfakes rendering. I paused on one. A video showed an adult Adrian sitting at a piano, but his face was that of a child, softened by AI. He smiled at an imaginary audience that applauded him. A recorded applause, on a perfect loop. In the right corner, directories with future dates. Dream sequence, Christmas, Posen 25, Apology, Father, Alto 09. He wasn't just reliving the past. He was planning alternate futures, filmed in advance, where his forgiven parents attended his graduation, where the teacher praised every chalk stroke. It was a timeline of fabricated comfort. A low siren began to flash. 1 minute until the security patrol. I slipped out. Martin took the keycard back. "There's another session the day after tomorrow. He wants to rehearse the first time he won a trophy. But in real life, he never won anything competitive. He's going to invent an award ceremony." "Why do you keep doing it?" I asked. Martin sighed. "Because I'm an unemployed actor most of the year, and here they pay up front in dollars. Cash." I climbed 4 flights of stairs with the weight of horror on my shoulders. Upstairs, the marble world remained impeccable. I wiped my brow, swapped my heels for sneakers, and went home. At the press conference on Thursday, Adrian radiated confidence under the photographer's flashes. He gave a speech about emotional innovation in the corporate environment, a phrase that to the public meant wellness. To me, it sounded like a code from an emotion laboratory. Between pats on the backs of investors, he leaned into my ear. The classroom at 11 p.m., Clara. Formal attire. Formal? For a children's stage? I nodded. At 10:50 p.m., I put on my black blazer and went down. The third grade door was open. Dramatic lights bathed the chalkboard. Today, however, the desks had been removed. In the center was a Victorian dining table, silver cutlery, real candles. At the head of the table, 2 actors, the parents, wore fine clothes. A child Adrian, played by a boy actor, sat to the right. The adult Adrian remained in the shadows, watching. I, guided by a production assistant, took the empty seat to the left. Roll. Younger sister. I swallowed hard. The slate clapped. The scene began. The father raised his glass, proudly toasting his son's success. The mother handed the boy a golden trophy, all perfectly loving. But seconds before the cut, the adult Adrian stepped into the frame. He tore up the script, improvising. "It's not enough," he roared. "You never loved me, and you're not going to start loving me today." He swept the table with one arm. Dishes flew. Candles were extinguished on impact. The boy actor cried out in fear. I froze. The parent actors were petrified, waiting for direction. None came. Adrian collapsed to his knees, sobbing, repeating, "It was never enough." And there, watching the most powerful man I know break down on a fabricated set, I understood the message from the tape. He was already past the point of no return. The pain was starting to control the show. Security guards arrived. The lights dimmed. Assistants covered him with a blanket. He didn't see me leave, but as I crossed the hall, the LED panel restarted, recording 3:01 Chorwo, a merciless timer. The next session was already scheduled. I had to decide, report him, run, or stay until the end, to prevent a tragedy that now seemed inevitable. On Friday morning, while the executive floor's ceiling lights were still cooling, I sat at my desk and stared at the black monitor. My reflection looked like someone else. Deep dark circles, ashen skin, proof that I had been mentally awake all night, replaying the dinner scene that had ended in collapse. I couldn't remain complicit. But I also couldn't just run to the press. Exposing Adrian without context would mean turning him into the monster he himself feared being, and I would become the betrayer of his trust. Besides, this emotional spiral was accelerating. In the first week, the reenactments were mild. Now, there were fits of rage. What would come next? I opened a blank document and started a list. Risk to Adrian himself, psychological fatigue, dissociation from reality. Risk to the actors, physical harm, glass, dishes, yelling, trauma. Legal risk. If the billion-dollar merger collapsed due to a scandal, it would affect thousands of jobs, stock markets. Risk to myself, confidentiality clauses, repercussions, reputation. I needed outside help, but discreetly. I thought of Dr. Karen Lawton, a corporate psychotherapist who had previously counseled executives at coal industries during burnout crises. She had a signed NDA and made her living on confidentiality. I called. "Dr. Lawton, this is Clara Dawson, Mr. Cole's assistant. I need an urgent consultation. Private." She gave me a time for 6 p.m., outside her office, at a discreet cafe on the Upper West Side. The day dragged on through meetings. Adrian didn't show up. He sent a short message at 2 p.m. Home office, reschedule what you can. Translation, emotional hangover. In the hallway, I ran into Harris, the head of cybersecurity. He whispered, concerned. The servers on level B4 pulled 200 terabytes of deepfake rendering in the last 36 hours. It's using half the UPS. The CFO is going to have a fit. I feigned surprise. Isn't that for the merger's ad campaign? Whatever it is, it's costing a fortune, he said, pursing his lips. And it's coming with authorization from the top. Another sinister note. Adrian wasn't just reenacting. He was transforming tapes into digital material, perhaps to watch perfect loops in the comfort of any screen. A full-blown addiction. At 6 p.m. sharp, I sat across from Dr. Lawton. She wore round glasses, her gray hair in a bun. She ordered a cappuccino. I barely touched my tea. "Tell me calmly," she began. I recounted everything. The ghost floor, the recreations, the family recording, the access to the data center, the breakdown at dinner. I spoke for 20 minutes almost without breathing. She just took notes. When I finished, she asked, "Clara, are you seeking help for him or for yourself? For both of us. If he breaks, I break with him," I replied, surprising myself. The therapist rested her chin on her fingers. Adrian is practicing traumatic reenactment. In moderate doses, psychodrama can be helpful, but without clinical supervision, it becomes an addiction. He's forcing his brain to seek dopamine in alternate endings. The more he fails, the more he repeats. What do? He needs to contain the cycle. But setting a limit for someone with absolute power requires an ethical workaround. You said there are recordings? Document everything. Show him proof of the damage he's already caused. Offer a medical alternative. And have a safe exit strategy if he reacts badly. She handed me a well-worn card. Dr. Hayakawa, psychiatrist specializing in behavioral addiction in the ultra-wealthy. He practiced out of an anonymous floor on Park Avenue. Discreet, very expensive. If he accepts help, call him. If he refuses, you decide if you become a whistleblower, she finished. On the way back, rain washed the sidewalk. A yellow taxi became a puddle under my shoes. I didn't even feel it. Action plan. Saturday morning. Copy all secret files from B4 to an encrypted hard drive. Extract payment logs from the front companies to prove the method. Record testimonies from 2 actors, Bruce and perhaps Mrs. Marion. Schedule a private conversation with Adrian. Confront him with the material. Offer Dr. Hayakawa's treatment. Simple on a notepad, terrifying in practice. At 1:17 a.m., I used my keycard to go down. My head was throbbing. On B4, the hallways were empty. The servers hummed like a swarm. I lowered my smartphone's brightness and connected a portable SSD. As the gigabytes flowed, I found a new folder. Perfect, Childhood, Edit, Final Pro Res. Almost 1 TB of 8K video. The name was revealing. Adrian thought he had finally gotten his childhood right. Would he calm down now? Or worse, would he become obsessed with achieving absolute perfection, expanding to his adolescence, college, dating? The export finished. Drive in my pocket, I ran up the stairs. Before leaving, I checked the 3rd grade door. Ajar, a soft sunset yellow light. Inside, a camera was pointed at the desk with the Adrian C nameplate. On the viewfinder, a set timer. Rec starts in 06 Arjoker. It meant a recording was scheduled for 7 a.m. Saturday morning. I swallowed hard. The actors would be coming in overnight. He wasn't stopping. Reaching the lobby, I received a text from an unknown number. Tonight 8 p.m., Faroa Cafe, me and one more. Trust me. M was Martin. And the one more? Maybe another actor willing to be a witness. I replied, "I'll be there." I got in an Uber, staring at my reflection in the window. Me, Clara, daughter of a librarian and a clerk, about to challenge a $50 billion empire, out of empathy for a boy who never left 1994, trapped in the body of a titan. The rain grew heavier, muffling the city's sirens. I closed my eyes. I prayed silently that, the next day, there would still be a bridge back for all of us. The Faroa Cafe was on a discreet side street in the East Village, its walls covered with old books and amber filament bulbs, perfect for people who want to talk without drawing attention. I arrived 15 minutes before 8, trembling, not from the cold, but because the encrypted SSD in my bag felt like it weighed 20 pounds. If anyone from corporate security found out, I'd be labeled a traitor in seconds. Martin waved from a corner shielded by bookshelves. Next to him was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair in a braid and a gentle face. She stood and extended her hand. Lillian Mayweather. In the script, I'm Professor Marion. So the one more was none other than Adrian's substitute maternal figure. I sat down, ordering a random tea. Before I could speak, Lillian slid a brown envelope across the table. Copies of my contracts, recording schedules, cash receipts, and, she lowered her voice, a backstage audio recording. He begs me to say I'm proud while he holds me. I broke character, Clara. This isn't acting. It's an addiction that's going to kill him. Martin added, they've called extra sessions for Sunday and Monday all night long. They say Adrian is going to expand the universe. They're talking about recreating the first high school dance. The set design team has already built a gymnasium on T4. He hasn't slept in 3 days. I told them about the data center, the deep fakes, the perfectly edited family. Lillian's eyes widened. So he doesn't need us anymore. We're just a bridge until the AI can create the perfect theater without humans. I took the SSD out of my bag and put it on the table. Everything is in here. If the press gets this, Adrian will fall. But we'll fall with him. We'll lose our jobs, maybe face lawsuits. On the other hand, if we do nothing, he sinks alone and takes everyone in his blast radius with him. A heavy silence. The waiter brought my mint tea. Steam rose, but no one drank. I want to try a clinical intervention, I said. I handed them Dr. Hayakawa's card. He's available Sunday at 10, under total confidentiality. I need to convince Adrian to go. Martin frowned. How do you drag the proudest man in Manhattan to a psychiatrist? I didn't have an answer. It was Lillian who offered one. He trusts me as his teacher. If I say it's an external rehearsal, an emotion lab, he might agree. But he needs your endorsement, Clara. You're the only voice off stage he listens to. I took a deep breath. The idea of tricking him to save him was paradoxical and dangerous, but the alternative was watching him inflate papermen until he burst. We agreed on a plan. Saturday, 11 p.m. I would meet Adrian before the 7 a.m. recording session. I would use the material from the SSD to show him how far he'd gone. The lure, Lillian would propose a therapeutic workshop with an emotional script specialist, Hayakawa, for Sunday at 9:45 a.m. Martin would ensure the other actors cooperated, without raising suspicion. If Adrian had a breakdown, Lillian's security, she had a bodyguard friend from off-Broadway, would be in a discreet car, ready to intervene. When I left the cafe, I realized it was raining again. Each drop felt like a metronome, a reminder that the clock on Adrian's suffering was ticking fast. Saturday, 10:50 p.m. I arrived at T3 with my keycard trembling in my hand. The hallway was dark. The crew was still setting up the lights. I found Adrian in the makeshift dressing room. Actually, an old teacher's lounge turned into a backstage area. He was wearing a cobalt blue varsity jacket, embroidered with Class of '96, and holding a gleaming copper trophy, but his eyes, red from insomnia. Clara, like the trophy? A perfect replica of the spelling bee championship I lost in '95. I won't fail this time. A fragile laugh. I closed the door. I clutched the SSD to my chest. We need to talk. I plugged the drive into a production laptop. The screen flickered on, opening the video of the broken dinner, then the deepfake renders, then the folder of cash payments. Look where we are. He stared for 5, maybe 10 seconds. His pupils dilated, his jaw clenched. You broke into a restricted area. I am the restricted area, Adrian. I'm your assistant, not your jailer. I'm trying to stop you from losing yourself completely. He stood up, tripping over cables. Anger and shame collided on his face. This is my therapy, my money, my childhood. Who gave you the right to? No one, I cut in. But who's going to give you the right to continue when you collapse? Your investors, the press, they'll devour you. I brought real help, a specialist. Sunday, 9:45. Come with me. Lillian will be there. We can bring Martin, anyone you trust outside of these holograms. He laughed without a sound, running a hand over his face. A psychiatrist? They want to drug me until I forget who I am? He wants to stop your memory from becoming an unrecoverable cage. I lightly touched the trophy. You deserve real pride, not a replica. Adrian turned his back, facing the dressing room mirror. He slammed his fist on the glass, but it didn't break. He took a breath. And if it fails like the other therapies, then we'll try something else, I replied firmly. But stopping the pretense is the first step. A long silence. Finally, he set down the trophy and sat in the armchair, his head in his hands. Clara, I'm tired, he whispered, the voice of a defeated boy. Tell the teacher I'll be there. Just cancel tomorrow's recording. Enough for today. My chest loosened with relief, but fear still lingered. He could change his mind at any second. I left T3 around midnight. In the hallway, Lillian was waiting anxiously. I just said, Sunday, 9:45. He agreed, for now. Martin appeared from behind her, holding a box of costumes. Script suspended, I announced. Spread the word to the team. Electrical maintenance. No one records until Monday. I need total silence. He nodded, his eyes full of hope. Or was it panic? I went up to the ground floor and sent a text to Dr. Hayakawa. Patient confirmed. Will arrive discreetly, fees in hand. On the street, the rain had stopped. The cold air smelled of freshly washed asphalt, as if the city had been given a chance to start over. But I knew Sunday's sun would reveal whether we were saved or accomplices in a final failure. Sunday, 9:15 a.m. I waited on a side street on Park Avenue inside a black SUV with no corporate plates. In the back seat were Lillian, Mrs. Marion, and Martin, who was unshaven. The silence in the car felt fragile, as if any sound might scare Adrian away from the promise he'd made. The driver, a friend of Lillian's from the off-Broadway circuit, kept the radio off, the tinted windows up. At 9:22 a.m., a service door of the coal industry's skyscraper opened. Adrian appeared in dark jeans and a simple shirt, with no security. He seemed smaller than the skyscraper projected, shoulders slumped, eyes squinting in the winter light. He was carrying a leather backpack, no laptop, probably just the trophy or a recorder. He got into the SUV, met my eyes, and before I could say good morning, he muttered, "If I jump out before we go 5 blocks, I still have time to get back for the recording." "There will be no recording," I replied firmly. "Today, you're the star of your real life." He nodded without conviction. The driver pulled away. On the dashboard, 9:30 a.m. Dr. Kenji Hayakawa's office took up half of an anonymous floor, identified only by a discreet KH on the intercom. Thick wooden doors muffled the sounds from the hallway. There was no receptionist. This was pure confidentiality. We entered a room with neutral leather armchairs and a warm-toned lamp. No diplomas on the walls, all designed not to intimidate titans. Dr. Hayakawa emerged from an adjacent office, a middle-aged Japanese-American man in a graphite gray suit, his gaze free of judgment. "Mr. Cole," he greeted with a slight bow, "the stage here is yours, but there's no audience. Feel free to direct the scene or let it unfold." Adrian sat down stiffly. I, Lillian, and Martin took the opposite side in silence, like a Greek chorus. The psychiatrist placed a digital recorder on the small table. "I will only record with the patient's consent." Adrian studied the device. Perhaps it reminded him of his cassette tapes. "Record, as long as you erase it if I ask." Hayakawa clicked rec. The first 40 minutes were pure tension. Adrian described the memory project as if it were a business case. KPIs for emotional satisfaction, weekly increases in dopamine measured by blood tests. Hayakawa listened, punctuating only with "I see." But at 10:18 a.m., the doctor changed his tactic. "When Professor Marion says, 'I'm proud,' what does your body feel?" Lillian looked up, a living character before her creator. Adrian hesitated, bit his lip, and squared his shoulders as if bearing an invisible weight. His voice broke. "I feel a warmth behind my eyes, like someone opened a window in a stuffy room." Hayakawa paused with surgical compassion. "And what if, instead of staging pride, we accept that the 8-year-old Adrian survived without that pride? Perhaps he doesn't need to fix the scene. Perhaps he needs to celebrate the survival." Silence. The recorder captured a shaky breath. Lillian placed a hand on his arm. For the first time offset, he didn't pull away. "Survived," he repeated, almost a whisper. That's when he broke down. His shoulders began to shake, silent tears streaming down his face. Martin passed him a tissue. Beside them, I felt my throat tighten. Watching a Wall Street giant cry like a boy who lost his lunch money shatters any armor. Hayakawa waited for the crying to subside, then explained the method. Reconsolidation interruption. Revisiting the real scene one last time, without a script, allowing the memory to set as an unchangeable past, not an open wound. Adrian listened, sniffled. "If I accept that it doesn't change, what do I do with the void?" The doctor gave a brief smile. "An empty space accepts the present. You fill it with something that didn't exist in 1994, an authentic adult life." He closed his eyes, took a deep breath. He agreed. "Let's try." The session ended at 11:05 a.m., with an intensive therapy schedule set up, 3 times a week, 0 sonography. Adrian left looking exhausted, but lighter. I thought that, maybe, we had overcome the critical phase. 2 blocks later, Hope got a reality check. My phone buzzed with an internal click risk alert from the IT department. Massive traffic from B4. Anomalous connection. Possible leak. Adrian noticed my expression. Trouble with the merger? I opened a secure dashboard. Graphs were spiking in red. Files with the prefix dream sequence were being copied to an unknown IP via 4G fallback, meaning someone from the subterranean team had started an external upload. Maybe blackmail. Maybe panic over the suspended recordings. I showed the screen to Adrian. He went pale. "Shut it down." The voice of steel returned. "Call Harris. Cut all power to B4. Now." I made the call on speaker. Harris confirmed the lockdown execution, but the damage might have already been done. Martin murmured from the back seat, "If that material leaks, the tabloids will chew it up in minutes." Lillian clutched a hidden rosary. Adrian did something unexpected. He took my phone, recorded a 15-second audio clip, and sent it to his crisis team. "This is Adrian Cole. Any deepfake attributed to me is from an illegal source. I will sue everyone. Disable all proxies. I'm offering triple bonuses for loyalty. A pure power play." But the train was already derailing. The SUV stopped in front of a discreet boutique hotel where Adrian kept a penthouse. Before getting out, he spoke softly to me. "Take Lillian and Martin home. I'll handle the fire." He cleared his throat. "And, Clara, thank you for today. Even if everything falls apart after this, today was real." He got out. The door closed smoothly. We sat in the car, holding our breath. "Do you think he'll stick with the therapy?" I asked. Lillian adjusted her braids. "Depends if he survives the media explosion that might be coming. Old wounds heal slowly. New ones open in seconds." I pressed my forehead against the cold glass, watching Adrian enter the hotel without security. Just a long shadow cast across the lobby. Deep in my chest, I felt as much fear as hope. If he could put out this digital fire, maybe, just maybe, the boy from 1994 could finally go home, and the man from 2025 could start to live. But just then, my phone buzzed again. An anonymous message, no text, just a link. I clicked it. It opened a blank page with a countdown timer. 24 hours until the world meets the real Adrian Cole. My pupils dilated. It was a declaration of war, and the clock was already running. The anonymous counter read 23 age 59 57s when I closed the link, my hands sweating. The SUV glided back through Midtown, Martin and Lillian silent. No one dared ask what I had just seen, but the panic on my face gave it away. "A leak," Martin ventured. "Worse, an ultimatum." I showed them the frozen page on the screen. Black background, red digits, and the phrase, "The world will meet the real Adrian Cole." No ransom demand, no contact email, just a countdown. Lillian made the sign of the cross. I thought of Adrian alone in his penthouse, probably burning up the phone lines with every VP to contain rumors. The last thing he needed was another ghost hovering over his reconstructed childhood. And yet, this ghost was real. Digital, but real. 5 p.m. Makeshift war room. I returned to the skyscraper. Adrian had summoned a core circle of trust. Head of Cybersecurity Harris, Chief Legal Officer Madison, and me. We took over a windowless meeting room, bathed in blue light, with screens displaying network flows, emerging hashtags, and a dark web monitor. "Nothing public so far," Harris said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "But the upload didn't originate from the building after we cut the power. That means someone copied it earlier and is at an external location, offshore IP, bouncing via satellite. Any demand for money?" Adrian's voice was firm, though he was pale. "Nothing." Madison closed her laptop. "This sounds like an idealistic expose, not extortion." He rubbed his temples. "Someone wants to destroy me for the shock value, not the ransom." He looked at me. "Clara, we need to calculate the impact. If they leak scenes from the reenactments, the board will panic. Prepare 3 possible statements. Therapeutic art, neuroscience project, falsified material." I nodded, but asked, "What if the leaker is one of the actors?" Harris enlarged a screen. An internal security feed showed the backstage cameras from Friday night. In seconds, I found a frame of Martin handing the temporary keycard to me. My heart raced. Madison frowned. "Who is that?" "Set technician." I lied quickly. "We needed extra lighting." Adrian didn't question it. A hard-to-swallow relief. If he found out I had copied everything, the trust would be gone. More importantly, so would the chance to save him. A loud alarm echoed. A trending topics chart flashed Iron Cold childhood, but it originated from only 10 suspicious accounts. Harris took a breath. "The leaker's pilot test. We still have time." 8:30 p.m. A meeting in the dark. I sent an encrypted message to Martin. "Where are you? We need to talk." The reply came back short. "Warehouse District, 11th and Riverside. Come alone." I grabbed my coat, told the core team I was fetching crisis materials from the press suite. A lie. I took the service stairs, hailed a noisy orange taxi, the engine's heat throbbing in the tires. Warehouse 27B was a shell of faded brick. Inside, it smelled of damp wood and dust. Martin appeared from behind a pallet of dismantled sets. His eyes were anxious. "It wasn't me," he said without preamble. "The whole team got the same link, the same threat. It's an outsider, Clara. Maybe one of the freelance videographers. They film, take a backup copy. Where can I find them?" He scratched the back of his neck. "Low-Key Productions, Brooklyn. But I have something more urgent." He held out a micro SD card. "Saturday's recording, making of camera. I haven't given it to anyone." I put it in my phone. Adrian shattering glasses, crying, repeating, "It was never enough." Raw, unedited video. I realized, if they leaked this file, the public wouldn't see a human billionaire. They'd see a dangerous madman. "Why are you still helping?" I asked, my voice thin. Martin sighed. "Because despite everything, that man helped my son pay for college with this money, and because nobody deserves to become a joke without a chance to defend themselves. I decided I had to confront the possible leaker before the deadline. Brooklyn, Low-Key Productions." I checked my watch. 9 p.m. Only 3 hours left. 10:05 p.m. Low-Key Productions. A graffitied warehouse. A makeshift sign. The receptionist was watching a reality show on her laptop. I used my Cole Industries badge as intimidation. "I need to speak with the editor who worked for a client codenamed Marion Drama. Now." She swallowed hard and pointed up a staircase. On the mezzanine, a purple LED light. An editing bay. Inside, a guy in a baseball cap, large headphones, a screen full of a premiere timeline, and in the bottom corner, a timer identical to the one on the website. "You're the timekeeper," I said. He took off his headphones and laughed nervously. "Freedom of the press, ma'am. The world needs to know the emperor has no clothes. And you want to be the hero?" I stepped forward. "You'll screw over actors, technicians, families. This isn't exposing a crime. It's trauma voyeurism." He held up a flash drive hanging from his necklace. "The truth is on here. Truth without context is an empty bullet that kills innocent people." I took a deep breath. "Adrian is in treatment. Leaking this now will push him over the edge. Do you want live-streamed blood?" The editor hesitated. His eyes darted across the screen. The timer pulsed. "Whoa, on H, 55 mil. Give me 24 hours, I pleaded. "Let him prove he can get help. Then, if you still want to publish, do it with my full testimony. It secures your story, without destroying a broken soul." Silence. He bit his lip, weighing it. Finally, he clicked his keyboard. The timer reset. A new deadline appeared. "Plus 24 my grogs. One day, Ms. Dawson. Then it's journalism." I grabbed a cab, my heart pounding in my skull. I sent a message to Adrian. "Extension granted. 24H. Tomorrow 10 a.m. session with Hayakawa. Please don't miss it." I got an instant reply. "I'll be there." I watched the lights of the bridge pass brutally over the East River. Within 24 hours, the truth, his, mine, the editor's, would collide with the expectations of a world hungry for scandal. Maybe we'd survive, maybe not. But now there was a chance for a dignified closing, and I wouldn't let it go. The night was drawing to a close, and with it, the final part of this drama about a giant child who bought his own childhood, and now had to sell it back to his heart. The clock read 7:48 a.m. when I arrived again at Dr. Hayakawa's office. The building was still asleep. No doorman. The hallway smelling of fresh varnish. In my bag, I carried 2 objects. The micro SD Martin had given me, raw proof of the collapse, and a non-disclosure agreement drafted by the chief legal officer overnight. If the editor in Brooklyn received this, he could publish with medical context, not as a meme. Everything was ready for D-Day. 8:05 a.m. The elevator opened. Adrian appeared, a wrinkled white shirt, no blazer. Deep dark circles, but a determined expression. Lillian and Martin followed close behind, silent. We went in. Hayakawa was waiting. He turned on a lamp and asked us to sit in a semicircle. He placed only a notepad and a glass of water on the low table. Cell phones, laptops, everything went into a locked cabinet, an environment of total disconnection. "Today we will attempt a real reconsolidation interruption," the doctor said. "No script. Adrian, choose a memory that hurts less than the dinner, but enough to feel discomfort. Then, we will observe it without correcting it." Adrian closed his eyes, took a breath. "The day I lost the spelling bee." Lillian nodded. She knew the scene. "Describe it, but allow yourself to stay in the failure," Hayakawa instructed. Adrian began hesitantly. "I practiced the word miscellaneous all week. I got on stage. Everything was spinning, hot lights, Classmates laughing. I got it wrong. The principal took the microphone from my hand. The audience applauded the other boy's victory. I got off the stage and sat on the gym floor, hiding my face. That's when I swore I would never again fail where there were witnesses. His voice trembled. Instinctively, I raised my notepad, but Hayakawa signaled no. Adrian needed to feel human presence, not analysis. I took a deep breath, notepad in my lap, hands empty. Stay there, the psychiatrist instructed. No what-ifs. Observe the 8-year-old Adrian sitting on the floor. What does he really need? A long silence. A tear rolled down Adrian's face. He just wants someone to say, "You went through something hard, but you are still worthy." He doesn't want an edited trophy or paid applause. He wants rest. Hayakawa leaned in. Then give it to him now, as an adult. Look at yourself. Closed eyes are enough. And say exactly that. Adrian, his eyes wet, whispered to the empty space before him. You are worthy, even when you fail. You can rest. I'll take it from here. That sentence seemed to rip a stone weight from his chest. He let out a loud sigh, his shoulders relaxing. Lillian began to cry softly. Martin squeezed his eyes shut. I felt a tingling in my hands, emotion, and relief. The session concluded at 9:17 a.m. with a guided breathing exercise. Hayakawa explained the process should be repeated, with less and less theater each time. He handed over a prescription for a mild anxiety medication and recommended staying away from any reenactment sets for 30 days. Adrian signed for it, without objection. We left. The winter air was bracing. It felt like the whole world had taken a step back, allowing space between past and present. But there was no time for euphoria. The clock was ticking. 11 hours and 35 minutes left. 11 a.m. Back at the skyscraper. In the lobby, security guards were murmuring about a weird post that was starting to circulate on the forums. Harris pulled me aside. It's been linked on financial subreddits. A 15-second clip of Adrian yelling, "It was never enough," low resolution. The leaker released a teaser. I showed him the NDA and the micro SD. I have the full version and medical context. I can deliver it at 6 p.m. in a controlled press conference, or the leaker publishes it uncensored at 8 p.m. We need to convince the board to opt for a curated truth. Harris frowned. The board will never authorize exposing the CEO's mental health before a $60 billion merger. It would be worse to expose it without control. I took a breath. Get them in room 14B in 10 minutes. Adrian will speak to them personally. I went upstairs, adrenaline pumping. I found Adrian in his corner office, a panoramic view of the Hudson behind him. He was holding his phone, reading his feed. The mini player of the leaked video was on a loop. When he saw me, he raised his eyebrows. "You still think they'll buy weakness as human," he quipped. "Not sell," I corrected. "Contextualize. We get ahead of the narrative, show the treatment, bring in experts. Transparency becomes empathy capital." He gave a wry smile. "You've become my trauma branding director, Clara. If it saves you from the digital guillotine, I'll take the job." I handed him the NDA and micro SD. The board. 10 minutes. Shall we? He exhaled and opened the door. 11:30 a.m. Room 14B. An emergency meeting, 50 chairs, 12 occupied by old executives, others on video conference. They were murmuring indignantly. "Adrian, what the hell is this video?" the vice chairman snapped. Adrian didn't back down. "Part of a therapy. Someone leaked it. We have two options. Run and hide, or own it and lead the conversation about mental health for executives under pressure. I prefer the second." I projected a single slide. Timeline, trauma, reconstruction, clinically supervised treatment. I followed with arguments. The reputational risk of omission, precedents of CEOs being valued for vulnerability, the commitment of ESG funds to well-being. The questions were sharp. I answered with numbers. 38% of leaders report clinical depression. The market values transparency, etc. Adrian held firm, reinforcing, "My weakness is now a strength. I will transform this mockery into an open corporate neuro-wellness lab, funded by me." Finally, the chairman of the risk committee cleared his throat. "If we can get the leaker to hold off for 24 hours, we'll hold a joint press conference tomorrow. Otherwise, we record a video today explaining everything." I agree. A quick vote, 8-4 in favor of guided transparency. I breathed a sigh of relief. It wasn't a complete victory, but a secure trench. 2:01 p.m. Final negotiation with the leaker. I sent an encrypted message to the editor in Brooklyn. Board has approved a press conference. We invite you to attend firsthand if you sign an agreement. We've kept our promise. I need your word to hold off until 6 p.m. The reply took 7 minutes that felt like an eternity. Then it appeared, awaiting the press conference link. Content on hold until 18 wind. You have my word. I almost collapsed in my chair. 5:30 p.m. Press conference prep. The internal auditorium. Just 15 selected journalists under embargo. The rest on a live stream. Adrian requested a simple set. A podium, a small logo, neutral lighting. No teleprompter polish. He would speak off the cuff, but I slipped bullet points into his jacket pocket. Acknowledge the leak. Explain the reenactment as a failed therapy. Present the treatment plan with Dr. Hayakawa. Announce a research fund for youth emotional health. Thank the team for their support. He read them in silence and nodded. At 5:58 p.m., a green light flashed backstage. Adrian took a breath, his hands gripping the spelling bee trophy, a transformed symbol. He looked at me. Whatever happens, thank you. You got me here. The world still has to accept it, I whispered. But you said the first yes. No one can take that away. The stage door opened. He walked toward the flashes that were beginning to pop. Behind the curtain, I kept my phone in my pocket. The clock was ticking, but this time it didn't pulse with a threat. It was marking the moment the boy from 1994 finally faced the audience without having to script the applause. If he survived the next few minutes, we'd have time to heal. If not, the outcome would come like an avalanche. And there was still one last part of this story to be told. The monitor backstage read Viro 0007 as Adrian adjusted the microphone clipped to his collar. The spelling bee trophy rested discreetly on a side table, a physical memento of the past he had finally chosen to show the world without engineering a new ending. The lights came up. The journalist's murmurs ceased. 000. The live broadcast began. He started without slides, without corporate witticisms. Good evening. Tonight I needed to tell the truth before someone else did it for me. He followed the 5-point outline, but with a sincerity vibrating through his body that even I hadn't anticipated. He described the pain, described the obsession with building sets to defeat ghosts, admitted his failure, and thanked the team that made me see the difference between memory and life. When he mentioned Lillian and Martin, the cameras turned to them in the front row. I saw them wipe away furtive tears. When he announced the research fund for childhood trauma, a few reporters lowered their pens. You don't expect philanthropy in a public crisis act. 13 minutes later, the last flash echoed. Adrian bowed his head respectfully and left the podium. The conference had no Q&A, a house rule. But on Twitter, the hashtag #TheNias the Human Billionaire shot to the top within 40 minutes, crushing the sarcastic versions that others tried to push. The editor in Brooklyn kept his word. At 6:15 p.m., he released an article headlined, "The Boy Behind the Empire," linking the full press conference and authorized backstage clips, already featuring commentary from Dr. Hayakawa. Far from mockery, the piece became an analysis of mental health in high-performance environments. In the adjacent hall, the board watched the Bloomberg terminals. Stocks dropped 4% in the first few minutes, then stabilized at 1% half an hour later. Analysts said the atypical transparency minimized perceived damage. A victory on Wall Street is measured in curves that stop plunging. 48 hours later, the media bomb didn't explode. It spread like a controlled burn. American talk shows debated whether it was brilliant marketing or a true catharsis. Financial columnists were split between unacceptable weakness and a new paradigm of empathetic leadership. But the acid memes lost their power against one image, a screenshot of Adrian, his eyes wet, saying, "The child survived." Surprisingly, audiences reacted more to the tremor in his voice than to the bizarre stage behind it. In the halls of Cole Industries, I heard managers comment, "I've never seen the boss smile at an intern before today." And that was enough of an indicator of change. 2 weeks later, the sessions with Hayakawa continued religiously. Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, 8 in the morning. No actors, no LEDs. Adrian kept his distance from floors T3 and T4. Harris sealed off access under indefinite maintenance. The deepfake equipment was dismantled and sent to an academic lab affiliated with the research fund. One rainy afternoon, I received an invitation in my internal email. Meeting, 5 p.m., room 21A. Subject, the future of Clara Dawson. I arrived prepared for a warning or a dismissal. The company was still a minefield of bruised egos. but I found only Adrian, no security guards. "You saved me from myself," he said, handing me an envelope. "This is an offer to head the new Directorate of Human Initiatives, a program to fund healthy memory projects in underprivileged schools, but only if you want to stay. If you'd rather leave, I'll give you a letter of recommendation that will get you in anywhere you want." I opened the envelope. The position came with its own budget, autonomy, and preferred stock. I smiled, feeling a mix of pride and relief. "I accept," I replied, "if the first school gets a library named after Mrs. Marion." He laughed, a genuine laugh. "Deal. And the second will get a permanent spelling bee trophy." A final visit to the forbidden floor. Before the maintenance crews sealed the rooms, Adrian asked to go one last time, just him and me. We arrived at the beige-tiled hallway, now lit by the cold light of a work lamp. Desks were stacked in a corner, the chalkboard already smeared. He took a deep breath, ran his fingers over the third-grade Mrs. Marion sign, and slowly removed it, like someone closing an ancient tomb. "I don't feel the need to repeat it," he said. "The memory hurts, but it no longer hurts to command it." He handed me the sign. "Keep it, if you want a reminder that even billionaires need an emotional babysitter sometimes." I kept it, not as a trophy of power, but as a reminder that no job title exempts me from humanity. Epilogue. It is night again. I'm writing these lines from the 50th floor, the new wing of the Living Memory Initiative. On the floor below, architects are planning playful reading rooms for real children, not for ghosts. From here, I can hear the distant sound of the Hudson and think about what I said at the beginning. Buildings tell stories. The coal industry's skyscraper now holds two. That of a billionaire who tried to buy a perfect childhood, and that of a man who finally understood that imperfection isn't a production flaw. It's a fundamental trait of being alive. Adrian hasn't become a saint. He still invests heavily, still negotiates aggressively, but every Friday at 6 p.m., he sends a short message. "Time to go home. The kid deserves a rest." He's replying to himself, but it echoes in all of us. And I think that if my future press releases earn a few more empathy points on the real-life stock market, the bonus will have been worth it. People often ask, isn't every billionaire a villain? Today, I answer with more certainty. Some are neither villains nor heroes. They are prisoners freed by the key of vulnerability. And between us, the key always fit in the pocket of someone who, by chance, was willing to listen.
All right, it's that time. If this story has you hooked, let's do the full ritual. Hit the like button to support the channel, subscribe so you don't miss a beat, and ring that bell to be the first to know what's coming. Your opinion is golden, so drop it in the comments below.